In episode 7, at gunpoint, June continues to drive, but she's asking Serena a bunch of questions like, where are we going? What are those guys going to do to Luke? And the issue is, Serena is going into labor. June, who is getting visibly frustrated, eventually just says, you know what, screw this. She gets out of the car, leaving Serena to drive herself. But Serena doesn't get too far down the road before she crashes the car, and guilt gets to June. So she goes to check on her and realizes, oh, of course, you're going into labor. Why wouldn't you go into labor at this time? While she hates Serena, the mother in her cannot just abandon her. So she gets her to the closest empty place, which is a barn. Being a first-time mother, Serena doesn't really know what to expect. It's not ideal conditions to have a child in. It's an abandoned barn, and it's pretty cold outside. Still, it's better conditions than when June gave birth to Nicole, but for Serena, who's never done this, she's pretty scared. And that's when June starts telling her about Hannah's birth, which was 19 hours, and then obviously the birth of Nicole, which she did by herself. At least now Serena has somebody there with her. But as the two women discuss this, the contractions are getting worse and worse. June, who seems to kind of know what she's doing, steps in as a quasi-doctor, checking the cervix, making sure she can feel the head. She's going to have to be the one to deliver this baby. But as she's trying to do so, Serena assumes that June is just going to harm her child. You can't really blame her because June has kind of given off that I'm going to kill you vibe this entire time, up until this point. So June, who is just really trying to help, says, screw this. If you want to do it on your own, go ahead. And June walks outside to the car. The car is stuck in a ditch, so June has to jerry-rig it out of there. But ultimately, she's able to. And right as she's about to leave, she notices that there's a bunch of blood on her hands. And it's not hers, it's Serena's. And guilt once again gets to her, so she gets out of the car and goes back into that barn. When June walks in, Serena can't believe that she returned. And she's not scared, she's actually grateful. The two women then start going to work on breathing exercises, pushing, and trying to get this baby out. And after 3 hard minutes of pushing with some dramatic music, the baby finally comes out. Baby Noah. Everything appears good with him. He appears healthy. The only issue is he's a baby in a barn right now. As Serena feeds Noah for the first time, June starts telling Serena about the issues that she had when she tried to feed Hannah. How she would blame herself when in reality it wasn't her fault at all. It's just biology at times. Issues arise, but those things happen and you just move on. If you wouldn't know the backstory, you'd actually think these two women were friends because they've been getting along. And that's when Serena asked June, why didn't you kill me? I'm not talking about right now. I'm talking about back at the center when you had your chance. Why didn't you kill me? And an emotional June says, I didn't want to. The conversation then moves to Fred. How every time Serena thought about having a baby, she envisioned Fred there, and now he's not. But she turns to June and says, do you think he's going to be like him? And June says, well, that depends on how he's raised. June then lets Serena rest with the baby, and when she comes back, Serena didn't get much rest. She was worried she was going to smother the child. And that's when June says, Serena, we got to get you out of here. You can't just stay in a barn. We got to get you to a hospital. But Serena doesn't want to. She doesn't want to go to a hospital because she's worried that the Wheelers will find her. And that's when Serena tells June all about the Wheelers. How they basically treat her like their handmaid. She realizes how horrible that sounds, but she also realizes how messed up that system is. And she's worried that if the Wheelers find her, they're going to take Noah from her. Because of her experience, Serena is now coming full circle, and she realizes how horrible she was. She doesn't want the Wheelers to get Noah so badly that she tells June to take him. Take him back to Canada and raise him with Luke. She'd rather Noah be raised with Luke, who she calls a good man, than the Wheelers. In Serena's mind, she doesn't really have a lot of options. Can't go back to Gilead, and if she goes back to Canada, they're going to find her. So she's willing to give her baby up to her mortal enemy just so this child doesn't fall in the hands of Ryan and Alanis. She looks at her child and says, I delivered him and I held him, and maybe that's all that's meant for me in this life. Maybe it's God's will. But June does not believe in God's will. She starts giving Serena a speech about how they thought handmaids were God's will, but they weren't. The women of Gilead didn't care that these were real people. They just thought that they were vessels. And as Serena starts apologizing for her behavior in the past, June cuts her off and says, I don't care that you're sorry. We mattered. We were people. We had lives. And that's why I'm going to save yours, Serena. Because this isn't Gilead. And I am not you. This isn't for you, by the way. It's for him. You're his mother, and he belongs with you. The two women then get back in the car, drive over the border, and find the closest hospital. Serena gets admitted, and they take her back, and June promises, I will be here. I'll wait for you. But then she makes a phone call to Luke to let her know that she's safe and where she is. Shortly after Serena is admitted, June goes to check on her, and she gives her an update on everything with Noah. While Serena is really concerned about things like jaundice and the fact that he was taken to the NICU and the fact that they're feeding him with formula, it's June who calms her down by letting her know all of that is normal. Your baby is healthy. You are fine. Everything's okay. As June gets up to leave, Serena extends her hand and says, June, thank you. And the two women hold hands as June, who doesn't really know what to say, just says, you're welcome. When June leaves Serena's room, there is Luke waiting for her, and the two embrace. June fills Luke in on everything that's happened, but then all of a sudden, two cops and an immigration officer walk by, and June gets concerned. Luke tells her not to worry about it, but at this point, June's invested, and she can't. She follows the immigration officer and the two cops into Serena's room, where they arrest her. Serena and Luke are watching all of this go down. The police inform Serena that as an undocumented person, she doesn't even have a right to a lawyer. They handcuff her to the bed, and they explain that once she's discharged, she's going to go to a detention facility. And the detention facility does not have infant care, which means that her child is going to go into a foster system. June, who is just about as shell-shocked as Serena, can't figure out how this is happening, and that's when Luke tells her that it was he who called. Serena gave up her diplomatic status when she left that information center. Her crossing over the border, crossing over again, it led to this. And as Serena is screaming not to take away her baby, there's June, who seems powerless to do anything about it and who didn't want this to happen. Because at that moment, June knows exactly what Serena's going through. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.